Finance Minister Enoch Godondwana has received a boost with Parliament's Finance Committee endorsing his fiscal framework. This marks the third attempt to pass the national budget following a public backlash over the two earlier proposals to raise the VAT of VAT. Meanwhile, SCOPA chairperson Newzroom has warned of serious consequences if the budget isn't passed by the end of July. Let's now bring in to this conversation Joe Maswanganyi, who is the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance. A very good morning to you, Chair. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Was there a sense of relief from your end that after these two-day meetings that the fiscal framework has now been adopted?
Good day, Aldrin. Yes, we are relieved as a standing committee that the report has been processed and adopted. It is very important that it is not about Parliament, but this budget is about the budget of the state that have to look after somebody who has just been born last night, who's zero, up to the person who's going to be buried. So everybody in South Africa should be happy that at long last we are going to have budget where government will have to roll out infrastructure of 1 trillion, make sure that they cater for teachers in KwaZulu-Natal, employ health workers who are much needed. Hospitals are full of patients, but with few health workers. So this budget will go a long way in changing the lives of South Africans.
Yeah. What do you make of the arguments that the EFF had put forward, which was also put forward in that court application that was dismissed on the basis of non-urgency? And this is in relation to the powers of the minister to increase a fuel levy without the Parliament's endorsement around that.
Remember, Aldrin, the minister has got powers in terms of Customs and Excise Act to do what he has done. It is the same scenario with the VAT Act of 1991 in terms of Section 4, where the minister has those powers. Until those powers are declared unconstitutional by the Constitutional Court, they remain his powers. We have raised with the minister the issue of the levy, the fuel levy. It's not the first time. If you remember in 2022, this matter came also to Parliament. And we said, okay, fine, you can increase the fuel levy, but you know that it will have other impacts in terms of transport cost. Groceries will go high because the economy revolves around transport. So what are you doing to cushion, more especially the poor? Because the studies after study have confirmed that the workers spend more than 40% of their income traveling between home and the working place. And the fuel levy is going to put more pressure. So Treasury will have to come back and say, this is what we are going to do. So the application of the EFF has been dismissed, and let's accept that they should not have taken that route. They should have taken the route of challenging issues in Parliament where they are represented.
Yeah, one of the key differences to this budget proposal and fiscal framework is, of course, that there is no VAT increase, there is no VAT increase, but there is that fuel levy, the fuel levy increase. When budget 1.0 and 2.0 was being proposed, there was also the proposal to expand the VAT-free basket. That has now been done away with budget 3.0. And as you point out, though, the impact of a fuel levy increase would be dire for people who are poor, especially considering already the cost of living and the cost of food. We're having a conversation a bit earlier on around 23% of South Africans who are food insecure.
You are quite right, Aldrin. If you look at the manifesto of the African National Congress 2024, amongst other key priorities is to deal with the cost of living. The cost of living in South Africa is quite very high, more especially for the poor and the middle class. We can't just do things as normal. We have to seriously intervene in that regard. You will not understand why a middle income have got serious problem of cost of living. It is because we have got what we call the missing middle. As public servants or working in industries where if they've got a child who's going to school, to university, their child does not qualify for NSFAS, but they don't earn enough to cater for university fees. They end up borrowing and end up with high debts. These are things that have to be looked at. And I've spoken about the poor, more especially on transport. What makes a South African worker different from workers in other parts of the country? It is because they stay far away. Somebody who comes from Orange Farm, taking a train every morning to Sandton, how much is that person spending? Alight at a street, then take another taxi to Sandton. At the end, they spend 50% plus. So this issue of fuel levy, we are going to take it forward even after the adoption of the budget and see to it that something is something is done to the poor, because stakeholders have raised it very sharply. But be that as it may, as I've said, this budget is not an austerity budget. Unlike the fiscal consolidation that we have had for more than 12 years, at least for the first time, there's a lot of money that is released for infrastructure, for economic development, for employment, and a whole range of other items which are quite very important for the people of South Africa.
All right. And what happens now up until the budget is presented before the National Assembly?
The process is like this, Aldrin. The process starts with the president tabling SONA. Then the following week or two, the Minister of Finance tables the budget, which will be in line with the SONA. From there, the Standing Committee on Finance start processing what we call the fiscal framework that is dealing with revenue proposals, dealing with the alignment of the budget, with the policy, and a whole range of other issues. When next week fiscal framework is adopted, which will be adopted, from there, it will be the Appropriations Committee that will be dealing with that process. It will be Appropriations Bill and Division of Revenue Bill. Once they are done, Parliament will convene to adopt again the Division of Revenue Bill and the Appropriation Bill. And then the budget will have been passed by Parliament and then sent to the President to assent, because it becomes an act of Parliament. And then departments and governments, nationally, provincially, and locally, will have the authority to spend the budget.
Yeah, and just one final one before I let you go is the issue around our national debt, government spending around 1.6 billion rand daily to service that debt. Is there a conversation and a discussion that is taking place at all, and maybe proposals that you have received as the committee for an introduction of a national debt that should be capped?
Yes, Alton, we have been raising this issue for quite some time, that the debt service cost is very high. Not that the debt to GDP in South Africa is very high. The debt to GDP of America is 130%. You look at Japan, you look at those many other countries, it's more than 100. Ours is not that very bad in terms of international standard benchmark. Be that as it may, National Treasury should have negotiated for reasonable debt service cost. The debt service cost is quite very high in terms of international standard. and the South African government should convince the lenders that what they are paying on a monthly basis, let's say on a daily basis, because on a daily basis we pay almost 1.2 billion rand to service the debt. That is unreasonable. That is too much. Something must be done by the South African government to take down the debt service cost, which is the money that must go to pay for teachers, improve hospitals, infrastructure, and make sure that the economy grows, because the problem in South Africa is the economic growth. Our peers, Egypt, Nigeria, and other countries in Africa are growing at plus 2%. Ours were still at 0, something.
0.1.
0.1 or so in terms of the latest stats, SA. That is not something that we can celebrate. It should be more than 3%. Is then that we are going to make a serious dent on unemployment, poverty, inequality.
Let me ask you in conclusion, Chair, in cases like this, who should take responsibility? Whose head should be on the block, whose neck should be on the block? Because we are saying that we need to grow the economy. We've been struggling to do that. The MK party is arguing that the Finance Minister should resign because of the handling of the budget. But more broadly, who should be taking responsibility?
We don't deal with the challenges facing the country by chopping or guillotining people. That's not how you run a country, because it means every day you'll become an abattoir of guillotining people. You find a solution. Parties which are represented in parliament have been elected by their constituencies to come and enrich the debate in parliament, to come and hold government accountable. Recently, Cabinet has adopted the medium-term development plan, and they talk about a 3% economic growth. They have to come back to Parliament jointly and tell Parliament and the public as to how are they going to grow the economy. All of them, because Cabinet members account collectively and individually in terms of the Constitution. Because they have adopted the MTTP as a collective, it is upon them, through whatever clusters that come to Parliament, to tell us how they are going to grow the economy. We can't keep on having excuses why the economy is not growing. Why is Uganda growing the economy at 5% plus? Why Egypt is growing? Why Nigeria is growing? I'm talking of African countries, not of our countries in Asia and America where the conditions are different. Here in the continent, Ethiopia and other countries, their economies are growing at a very high percentage. So gone are the days of excuses. Now is the time for service delivery.
Thank you so much for your time. Joe Maswanganyi is the committee chairperson for finance there. This is following the adoption of the fiscal framework.